So the rational response squad have said effectively that 85% of mankind are mentally ill. They're saying that religion is a mental illness, therefore with 85% of people being religious, 85% of us are mentally ill. Soup Excellency, who knows a bit about this subject himself, has stated quite clearly that, for one, it does not say in any psychology textbook that religion is a mental illness, and two, it's somehow wacky to suggest that 85% of our species are mentally ill. Now, I think they're both wrong. I think that 100% of mankind, near as damn it, are mentally ill. And I'm obviously going to have to justify that. And I'm going to try. Now, both sides are arguing from the point of view of psychology. And both sides have something to back up their claim. I'm not so much going to use psychology as an evolutionary perspective. But I start off by looking at an observation made by Michel de Montaigne in the 16th century, which I've recently been reminded of by a video on YouTube. And de Montaigne, whatever, points out that animals have no shame. Something you may have noticed yourself. They'll piss and crap on each other, they'll sniff each other's arses, they're not in the least bit concerned about wearing clothes. They don't seem to have any of the hang-ups that mankind has. As a result of that, if you define sanity as being at ease with oneself and one's place in nature, which doesn't seem too bad a definition, provided it's as rational as you can manage, being a pig or a dog or whatever, then I think that's the height of sanity. Being at ease, without the need for delusion, to me that's sanity. Some could argue the point, and I'll accept any arguments along those lines. But for now, stick with me. My suggestion is that all animal species are inherently, absolutely sane, with the exception of individual animals who've undergone so much pain and so much anguish that by the standards of their species they become technically mentally ill. Now, some might say that animals can't experience mental illness, but I'd remind you of the videos which you must have seen of monkeys kept inside cages barely big enough to hold them. The animals rock to and fro, and you as a primate will recognize that that is a sign of extreme mental anguish. And I'm sure other animals can feel it too as a result of pain or trauma. Now, if I say that all animals are inherently sane, as a rule, and I suggest that 100% of humans are mentally ill, as an evolutionist, as somebody who realizes that mankind is just another animal, I have to come up with some special circumstances, and that should be pretty obvious what that is. I'm talking about intelligence. Now, remember in the animal kingdom that there are gradients of sophistication and scale to all evolutionary adaptations. If you think of the tooth, the smallest tooth is probably so small you couldn't see it without a microscope. The largest tooth is probably about that big. But there's a steady gradient between all teeth of all species in all epochs. You could put them in a very smooth curve. Or line would probably be more accurate. But it's not the same with intelligence. When you look at intelligence as an evolutionary advantage and compare it to, say, the tooth, then you start off in the rest of the animal kingdom with that same gradient of intelligence. But when it gets to mankind, it's the equivalent of finding an animal with a tooth the size of a redwood tree. There's a chasm between us and the next most intelligent species. And this is where the special circumstances comes in. As I've already stated, an animal can be made ill by too much pain and anguish, but it should be remembered that mankind has to deal with something that no other animal in the animal kingdom has to deal with as a result of mankind's vast intellect by comparison with the rest of the animal kingdom, and that is the sure and certain knowledge that they are going to die. Now, this is no small thing. This is not going to be a small factor in setting apart the mentality of man from the mentality of the other animals. We, above all of them, know that we must die, and that is something that we have to deal with. In some ways, that realization that we have to die is the price that we pay for our dominion over the rest of the animal kingdom. The price of intelligence is the knowledge that you have to die. Religion, if it is anything, or at least from the buyer's perspective rather than the seller. The seller's doing it for power, but the buyer is doing it to dilute the fear of death. But the weird thing about it is that religion concentrates on death. When I was a kid, and I was very, very young, I can distinctly remember asking my mother, quite sadly, if I was going to die. Or I think I asked her if she was going to die. And she said yes, and my follow-up question was obviously, am I going to die? And the answer was yes. At a very young age, that was the answer. And the lights went off that night, and I probably thought about it for a while, and then I went to sleep. I don't remember any great trauma. That was it. The knowledge was in my head. That was the end of the matter. But for a religious person who tries to believe in religion to assuage the fear of death, all it is a constant reminder. I don't think about death that much. I know it's going to happen. I don't think about it every day. I probably think about it every week, but I don't think about it every day. And when I do think about it, it's no big deal. But with religion, you are constantly being reminded of death. So it's quite ironic that they choose religion to dilute the fear of death, and instead they bring death into their life on a daily, if not hourly basis. So this solution to the fear of death is actually a constant reminder of death itself. I don't think it's natural to think about, even though we have the knowledge of death, I don't think it's natural to think about it too often. I would suggest that when the moment presents itself, we all tell our children that yes, they are going to have to die. No, it's not going to be for a long, long time. And when it comes, a full life can do a lot to comfort the person who's about to be on the receiving end of nature's cruelest joke. And I think that's the answer. I think the answer is that we don't make our children promises that they're going to live forever. All we can say to them is, nobody knows why the universe exists. Nobody knows if there is any answer to that question, or if the question has any meaning whatsoever. Anyone who tells you that they know the answer to that is giving you a shit sandwich. Tell the kids they're going to die. Be honest with them. Let them deal with it. They'll deal with it. And when all's said and done, living your life and saying, I must die one day, for an intelligent creature, is just about as sane as you can get. So I suppose what I'm trying to say is that the Rational Response Squad hit the target, in my opinion, but they missed the bullseye. Because although religion is a secondary condition, it's brought upon by the primary condition. And that is the morbid fear of death. Is there anything in that psychology book, I ask myself, about the morbid fear of death? Because that is the mental illness which we all, to a greater or lesser extent, share. And it's that condition which leads the religious to believe the strangest things. We all suffer from it. Some of us just deal with it better than others. The bottom line is you should laugh and party every chance you get.